Here's Fantasy Alpha's Week 9 thoughts on players on which we're optimistic. Jets at Dolphins, Sunday 1 p.m. You should be able to trust Sam Darnold to Jamison Crowder and Robbie Anderson. Last week, the Dolphins gave up 2 long touchdowns to Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, and this week, the Dolphins' defense will be without their best cornerback, Xavier Howard. Robbie and Crowder should see a lot of quality targets in this one. And we'll stay with this game, Jets at Dolphins, Sunday 1 p.m., running back Mark Walton versus the depleted Jets linebacking core. Walton is averaging 15 touches a game now, and with linebackers C.J. Mosley, Hewitt, and Cashman out for the Jets, and also defensive lineman Leonard Williams, who they traded to the Giants this week, the Jets' front seven is very vulnerable right now, and running backs are averaging over 90 total yards a game against the Jets already. Texans at Jaguars, Sunday 9:30 a.m. in London. Quarterback Gardner Minshew and wide receiver DJ Chark against an ailing Texans defense. Last week, the Texans lost J.J. Watt for the season, and they're already dealing with defensive back injuries in Bradley Roby and Tashawn Gibson. Minshew and Chark played well against the Texans in Week 2, and since then, the Texans are giving up the 3rd most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks. Minshew and Chark could be deadly against this Texans defense in London. Bears at Eagles, Sunday 1 p.m. Running back Jordan Howard versus familiar foe in revenge game. Howard has 6 touchdowns on the year, and he's playing a Bears defense that since losing Hakeem Hicks has given up 5 rushing touchdowns the last 3 games. We like the chances of Howard to score a touchdown in this one. Lions at Raiders, Sunday 4:05 p.m. Quarterbacks Matthew Stafford and Derek Carr in a possible shootout. Both the Lions and the Raiders are each giving up over 27 points per game the last 3 weeks. With the weather nice in Oakland, there shouldn't be much hindering these two offenses from continuing to take advantage of opposing defenses. Packers at Chargers, Sunday 4:25 p.m. Quarterback Phillip Rivers at home in a battle versus Aaron Rodgers. Rivers has thrown over 300 yards 5 times this season, and with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Hunter Henry all healthy, and at home, we expect Rivers to rise to the occasion against Aaron Rodgers and the soft Packers pass defense. Titans at Panthers, Sunday 1 p.m. Tight end Greg Olsen against a Titans defense that's soft against tight ends. Olsen has been slower as of late, but he's got a great matchup against the Titans defense that has allowed 4 touchdowns to tight ends and over 50 yards a game a week to the position. Olsen should be leaned on by a struggling Kyle Allen this week. And Cowboys at Giants, Monday Night Football. Dak Prescott has 9 touchdowns his last 2 games versus the Giants. Last week, Stafford had over 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns against the Giants. And with Dak coming out of the bye with all his wide receivers healthy, he could finish as this week's best fantasy quarterback. And here are some others to watch. Tight end Cameron Brate versus Seattle, Sunday 4:05 p.m. Brate's going against the Seahawks defense that allows over 60 yards a game to the tight end position. Wide receiver Danny Amendola versus Oakland, Sunday 4:05 p.m. Amendola is on a roll the past 2 weeks with 16 for 200 his past 2 games, and he now faces a Raiders defense that's given up over 700 pass yards the past 2 games. Wide receiver Chris Conley versus Houston, London game 9:30 a.m. Conley has 7 for 186, a touchdown and a 2-point conversion his past 2 games. And with Dede Westbrook ailing, Conley will see more looks against one of the worst passing defenses in the league. And finally, wide receiver Devontae Parker versus the New York Jets, Sunday 1 p.m. Parker goes against the Jets secondary that will be missing one of their best cornerbacks this week in Tremaine Johnson. And Parker scored 3 touchdowns the past 4 weeks. And those are the players on which we're optimistic. And here are the players on which we're skeptical. Bears at Eagles, Sunday 1 p.m. Quarterback Carson Wentz against a Bears defense that's only given up 7 passing touchdowns this year. The Bears held Rivers to only 201 passing yards last week. And even with Deshaun Jackson possibly returning, it's still tough to trust Wentz this week. Bears at Eagles, Sunday 1 p.m. Running back David Montgomery versus the tough Eagles run defense. Montgomery was electric last week with over 120 total yards and a touchdown. But this Eagles run defense only allows a little over 80 rush yards per game. And Montgomery hasn't fared well against tougher defenses this season. Titans at Panthers, Sunday 1 p.m. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill versus a Carolina defense that's allowing only 215 pass yards per game. Tannehill has been hot as of late, but the Panthers' pass defense, especially at home, has been very strong this season, and they also create a lot of turnovers. We suspect that the Panthers' defense steps up against the Titans' offense this week. Redskins at Bills, Sunday 1 p.m. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin against cornerback Tre'Davious White. McLaurin has been a product of bad matchups the past few weeks, and that will continue in Week 9 against one of the best shutdown corners in the league. Not to mention Dwayne Haskins starting at quarterback. McLaurin is tough to trust. And another rookie who is tough to trust this week is Lions at Raiders, Sunday 4:05 p.m. Ty Johnson just can't be trusted yet. He was outcarried last week by Trey Carson, and he's barely averaging 3 yards a carry this season. Now Carson could miss this week, meaning Johnson will be relied on more, but I wouldn't leapfrog him into your lineup over any consistent players. And sticking to the theme of rookies here, Patriots at Ravens, Sunday night game, 8:15 p.m. Wide receiver Marquise Brown returns from injury against a New England shutdown defense. The Patriots have only allowed 2 passing touchdowns this year, to Golden Tate and to Demetrius Harris. Brown will most likely be matched up against Stephon Gilmore. He's coming back into a nightmare matchup. And we'll stay with this game, Patriots at Ravens, Sunday night, 8:15 p.m. Running back Sony Michel versus the Baltimore defense, only allowing 84.3 rush yards a game. Since being gashed by Nick Chubb, the Ravens' running defense has actually been pretty good. They held James Conner to 55 yards, Chris Carson to 61 yards, and the Bengals offense to under 20 yards rushing. Michel gets a lot of volume, but when he doesn't score a touchdown, he doesn't have a great fantasy day. We like the Baltimore run D coming out of the bye. And Cowboys at Giants, Monday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. Quarterback Daniel Jones against a well-rested Dallas defense. Now, Jones might get Shepard back in this one, but he's playing a Dallas defense that only allows 228 pass yards per game. And a few weeks back, the Dallas defense made Carson Wentz look like a lost rookie out there, forcing 3 turnovers out of him. We don't think the Giants defense can stop the Cowboys offense, but we do think the Cowboys defense can stop the Giants offense. And here are some others to watch. Quarterback Brandon Allen making his first start versus the Browns. The Browns normally have a pretty good pass defense, and we think Myles Garrett is going to be harassing Allen all day long. Quarterback Mason Rudolph versus the Colts. The Colts have only allowed 2 passing touchdowns the last 3 weeks. The Steelers will be missing James Conner in this one, and the Colts have their best linebacker Darius Leonard back. Tough matchup for Mason Rudolph. Wide receiver Darius Slayton versus the Cowboys on Monday night. Slayton had a great game last week with 2 touchdowns against the Lions. Now he plays a tough Cowboys defense. And with Sterling Shepard set to return, Slayton moves back to wide receiver 3, a lot less targets. And finally, running back LaShawn McCoy versus the Vikings. The Vikings don't allow many running backs to find the end zone, and McCoy lost a key fumble last week that led to the Chiefs giving the ball to Damian Williams more. So this week, not only does McCoy have a tough matchup, but he also has to compete with Williams. Not a great recipe for fantasy success in Week 9. And those are the players on which we're skeptical. And join us for Fantasy Alpha Live, Sunday, November 3rd at 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Instagram Live, and then we're going to switch over to Twitter Live from 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. at Fantasy Alphas. It's a live Q&A to get all your last-minute lineup questions answered. And download the Fantasy Alpha app. It's free in the App Store and on Google Play. I'll see you on Sunday.